Hi and welcome to Swedish Plantguys. This is a three-part series on planting or repotting. Why do we repot? When do we repot? And how do we repot? This is the second video and we will be focusing on when do we repot. So let's go. So when do we repot? Well, as we said in the first video, we repot when the soil or substrate starts to lose its functions. Now, just to recap quite quickly, what were those functions? Well, if we get loss of structure, loss of percolation, loss of water retainment, or loss of nutritional retainment, then we know it's time to repot. But sometimes it can be quite hard to know that one of those functions has been giving up. So luckily, it's not always the soil that can show us that, but also the plants. So here are a couple of visual indications that the plant can give you when it's time to repot. Now the first one is quite easy. Everybody can do this. It's just pick up your plant and take a look at the bottom. If you have it in a container or a pot that has drainage holes, and you should, by the way, then you can see that when the plant is starting to get roots coming out of the drainage holes, it's an indication that it's starting to get root bound, meaning it needs a repot. Another way can be that the plant it's actually not showing you in the bottom that a lot of roots are coming out of the drainage holes, but the plant is actually starting to push its way up and out from the pot. You can see that the soil level is actually starting to be raised. That's also an indication that it's time to repot. Another indication can be that the plant is starting to tilt. It's actually losing its stability. So one of the functions is clearly not working in the soil. But the plant is starting to tilt, it's starting to losing its stability. This is also an indication that it's time to do a repot. Another indication that can be a little bit harder is that the plant is always showing you that it's quite sad. It's wilting a little bit. Even when you've watered it, it doesn't correct that. It's always looking a little bit sad. Now there can be different reasons for this. One way the plant can look sad is that if you get brown leaves, even though you have watered your plant, and those leaves are really dry, then it can be an indication that the soil has lost its water retaining function. Another thing could be that your plant is getting black spots on the leaves. It could be anywhere on the leaves, not brown, but black spots. It could be on the tips, in the middle of the leaves. Now that is an indication that you could have something called root rot, meaning that you've had too much water around the roots and the roots have started to decay. They have gotten fungus or bacteria and they're starting to rot. This is also an indication you need to repot. Another indication that you might have to repot is that if your plant starts to grow very slowly, you know that you are taking care of it the same way as you've always been. There are no changes other than it's just stopped growing or it's growing really slow. This can be an indication that some functions within the soil has given up and it's time to repot. The plant can also show you by starting to lose its color. What I mean by that is that if you have a plant that is naturally, let's say, dark green, like this Schefflera here, but you notice that all of the leaves all at once starts to lose its dark green color. It's starting to look a bit shaded. And you know that it's not because you've had it in a southern window where the direct sunlight has been hitting it for 12 hours a day for weeks on end. That could be also an indication that it's starting to lose its color. If you know that it's not that, then it could be an indication that the function of the nutrients within the soil has started to give up, meaning that it's not being able to retain and release nutrients for the plant. And it's showing you by getting this faded color on the leaves. Another indication can also be that when the plant starts to grow, it's actually pushing out smaller and smaller leaves. And by smaller, I mean smaller than it usually is. That's also an indication that something could be wrong with the nutrients within the soil, so do a repot. The last way the plant could be showing you that it needs a repot is actually salt buildup. If you have a plant that is growing, it's feeling well, but all of a sudden you notice that on the top of the soil, this is actually pumice here, but it looks the same in soil, and you notice that you see this white fluffy stuff on top of the soil. This is actually salt, and that salt comes from the nutrients. When the soil is not able to hold on and release the nutrients to the plant or to the roots, what happens is that you get a salt buildup within that pot. As you add more and more nutrients, it's not able to give that to the plant. And eventually you will see that salt buildup coming up and to the top of the soil. This is a nice indication that it's time to repot. Now it could also be, of course, that you want to make a repot. It could be that your plant has grown so much that you need to repot it and maybe place it on the floor instead of in the window. And it could also be that you have no choice. It could be an accident. Maybe you've knocked your plant off the windowsill, broke the pot, and you have to make a repot. So if you have a new plant that has arrived to your home, if you bought it or you've gotten it delivered, know that it is quite likely that it is stressed. What I mean by that is that that plant has had quite of a journey. It has gone from the grower where it gets the perfect environment, perfect water, perfect nutrients, perfect light, perfect humidity. Then it's moved to the store. Perhaps it's moved around to different stores. Perhaps it's been at a wholesaler first and then to the store. In the store, it's not going to get the perfect environment. It's actually quite bad. So it starts to get stressed. Then it's moved again to your home when you've bought the plant, or it's being delivered to your home. So know that when it arrives to your home, it's quite likely to be stressed. So the first thing is not to do a repot, because a repot is quite a big thing. It actually stresses the plant somewhat. So if it's already stressed and you make a repot, it's quite likely that something will go bad. So it's our recommendation and our experience that when you get a new plant to your home, wait at least 6 months before you do a repot. I know what you're saying, sometimes you have to. And of course, if you have to, then you have to. If the plant gets delivered to your home and it's not in the pot anymore, or if it's delivered in poor quality soil, whatever, of course, you have to make a repot. But if everything looks fine, make sure to place that plant where it gets a lot of indirect sunlight. Make sure that it's feeling well, and after some months you can make a repot. But what if I have my plant on my windowsill, it's looking good, it's not showing me any of the problems that we've talked about in these 2 videos, but it's been in the same pot for a long time? When should we repot? Well, it's our recommendation that if you're not getting any type of problems, no breakdown in the functions of the soil, the plant is not showing you anything, then you can make what we call a scheduled repot. And it's our recommendation that you do a scheduled repot every 2 to 3 years, depending on what type of a plant it is. Some say that you should do a repot every year. It's not our recommendation, it's not our experience that you have to do it that often. Because like I said before, a repot is a bit of a stress for the plant. So we don't want to stress the plant if we don't have to. So a scheduled repot every 2 to 3 years. So now that we have established that we have a plant that needs a repot, what time of year should we do it? Well, most people recommend you doing it in springtime or early springtime. And there's a reason for that. In early spring, we have what we call an energy positive. The plant has been resting over the winter when it's not getting as much light or as much humidity indoors. So when we start to get that light in spring and the humidity starts to go up, that actually triggers the plant to start to grow. That's an energy positive. So if we do the repot, then we have a high likelihood of it being a good thing for the plant and not a stressful thing. Another time of year that it could work is also in autumn. The reason for that is that that is also a growth period of the year. The plant is actually getting ready for winter, getting ready for dormancy when it's not growing in wintertime. And mostly it's actually focusing a lot of that growth for the roots. So if you make a repot in autumn, then the roots can start to grow out into that new soil. That's also good. You could do a repot any time of year, but try and avoid all of the extremes. What I mean by that, try and avoid making a repot in the middle of summer when it's at its warmest. You have high heat, high humidity, lots of light. The plant doesn't want to focus on growing the roots, it wants to focus on growing the leaves. So we do not do a repot if we don't have to. Another time could be in wintertime. You could do a repot if you have to in wintertime when the plant is dormant, meaning that it's resting. But know that if you do that, it could be quite stressful for the plant because you're actually waking it up and you're actually breaking that dormancy. And you're saying to the plant, no, you shouldn't be resting now, you should be growing your roots out into this new nice soil. So you can do it all year round, but if you want that sweet spot, it's spring or autumn. Now, if you watch this channel a lot, you know that we are usually adding one more thing to this discussion. And that is we only make a repot when the plant is feeling well. Well, doesn't that actually go against everything we just said? Well, yes and no. Because if you know that you have functions in the soil that are starting to collapse, then yes, it's time to do a repot. But it's actually more common to have other issues that could be why your plant is not feeling well. Like for instance, most plants die in your home because you water it too much. You see that it's starting to wilter, it's starting to be a little bit sad, and you give it water, and then I'll just give it a little bit more because it's so sad. That actually kills more plants than anything else. It could also be that your plant is not placed right. It's not getting enough light, or it's getting too much light. So make sure that you know the reason before you do a repot. And I should add this, that if you have done a repot, let's say last year, then it's probably not a repot that's wrong. It's probably something else. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. That really helps our channel a lot. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please do. Hit the bell as well so you get a notification every time we put up something new. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, where you can get sneak previews on upcoming videos and sometimes a little bit more. Now until next time, hej då!